one match away from a consecutive European final.
Party on.
Amos Opeyemi started out in the Nigerian leagues, and with his ridiculous dribbling abilities, was able to find his way to Nice. It hadn't been perfect, but last year's UEFA Conference League triumph was just another example of the road he was on. However, like many clubs, turmoil begins to happen, and things don't go the way many expect. That was Nice in Lagoon for the 2029-2030 season. Their director of football allowed Musawi to leave for Sociedad, and the Conference League top scorer Mota Bang to Leverkusen. How he got a big transfer before Amos is a bigger mystery than Lukaku's Champions League strike. Nevertheless, they got a bag for them. So, who came in to replace them? 32-year-old Rafa Mir and bloody Jason Knight? Same vibes. They did have the Spaniard who came in on loan, just call him John. But all that did was force Nistrip, the manager, to play Buisson at striker since Rafa Mir was as unreliable as Ronald Koeman. Oh wait, different universe. Video's out now though. By November, Nice had as many wins in Ligue 1 as they did in the Europa League, which was 2. They were 15th before their fixture with Rennes. The XG table thought they should be in 6th, but due to a lack of a striker and pretty abysmal defending, this was the reality. Amos was doing the best out of the starters, but in 12 fixtures, he only had 3 goals and 2 assists. In contrast, he was cooking in the Europa League with 4 goals, including 1 against Atletico Madrid. Okay, the other 3 were against Ferencvaros. That didn't matter to Jakub Nistrip, who desperately needed a win versus Rennes, and with Jason Knight of all people equalizing the affair late, it was just false hope. As in the 95th minute, Rennes striker was sent in behind and opened up the coffin. Nistrip was sacked, and Oscar Lopez was hired to fix everything. A former Barca youth coach, his previous managerial experience was getting sacked by Betis within 2 seasons. Despite that, Nice did win their first match with him, but then they had to play Newcastle in the Europa League. Oscar starts off using a 4-3-3, which means Amos had to be pushed to left wing. He can play there, but his physicals weren't as explosive compared to top wingers in the game. I'm sure he'll adjust. But Newcastle began scoring, and Nice were absolutely toothless. The reunion with Diop didn't go as expected.
It's Jover.
With Ligue 1 written off, it was Europe where Amos would shine. After the loss to Dynamo Kiev, North Macedonian club Shkupi were smashed, and Frankfurt were dealt with rather easily. Still, that wasn't enough for Nice to finish in the top 8, so just like in the Conference League last season, another playoff round. St. Gallen were the opponents, and Amos was the hero here. With a 0-0 at the away leg, the Nigerian would find a brace at home to move towards the round of 16. A rematch with Atletico Madrid was next. The league phase encounter earlier on saw them equalize in the final minutes. This time around, Nice would shut them out and get a 2-goal advantage following the first leg. That included Amos' assist to Ouattara. The second leg was intense, but Amos and John's goal was enough to move on to the quarters. I've kind of brushed aside Atleti, but while they're strong, they're not the force they once were. By this point, Amos was the 3rd top scorer.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Only behind Isak, which is fair enough, and a guy named Thomas Kaling from Nordsjælland. He's not important in this story. Nice hadn't lost the first leg yet, but that was about to happen versus Fiorentina until Watiao appeared and absolutely turned his opponent to equalize in the 92nd minute. That was enough to break a whole team's spirit, as Nice would handle La Viola, which included the 7 finishing Buisson, scoring 2. Villarreal in the semi-final seemed to have gone to plan. Nice were 2-1 up after Amos assisted Buisson for the lead. However, here shows the problem with the French club this season. You saw that, right? The back 4 was perfectly set up, but in his space of 2 passes, it was a 3-on-2 for Villarreal. Then, in the last minutes, Christensen getting a second yellow for a handball was so cruel by the ref. So that's how Nice got 1 match away from another European final. Although, just have a look at their form following the playoff round. Not a lot of green, and no matter how hard you try to avoid mistakes you've been making, once it becomes a habit, it creeps in when it matters the most. At home to Villarreal before the halftime interval, Xabi was left wide open to give the Yellow Submarines a 1-goal aggregate lead. You'd expect to have the holes filled up off the back of the interval, but 1 minute into the second half, Centellas finds Morlanes for a second. Nice wouldn't find a shot on target for the entire 90, as not only did they miss out on the final, not only were they going to miss out on Europe, but they nearly got relegated.
It ended badly.
There are fans who question why a player leaves after having a successful season with their team. Sometimes, it's best to leave on a high and take the next step while you have the momentum. Amos had that post the Conference League win, There was major interest from Atletico Madrid in the summer, and even Juventus during the winter when his stock was still high. In hindsight, they triumphed over Atletico, and would he be able to handle Antonio Conte?
Excuse.
But now, his interest is from Rennes, who did push PSG, but it's not the step up he was imagining. Bayern were also intrigued, but they quickly vanished. All of that was going on in his head. Meanwhile, the 2030 World Cup was beginning. Nigeria were placed in a group with Qatar and Spain. The Super Eagles had a new coach named Gavin Hunt, and he played a 4-4-2?
Oh, this shit again.
With Amos not even getting a second versus Qatar, it's as simple as Amos off, TV off. They were also missing 2 stars, Chukwueze, who retired after last year's AFCON failure, and Osimhen, who was injured. So they were basically missing their 3 best attackers, which saw them get smoked by host Spain in the second fixture. Yet again, not a single minute for Amos. Then, something weird was happening. Nigeria beat a formidable opponent, Uruguay, 2-1, with goals from Taiwo Awoniyi and Gift Orban. Then, with around 5 minutes away from elimination to Netherlands, Awoniyi pulled off a miracle and scored a brace in that time to win again. Against Denmark in the quarters, he grabbed another one. Despite Olusegun getting sent off before halftime, Nigeria held on and became the first African country to reach a World Cup semi-final. Remember, different universe. Almost to this point, still hadn't stepped onto the pitch, and he wouldn't do so in the semi-final versus Argentina. Once again, Nigeria was on the brink of elimination. A penalty was given, and Thiago Almada made no mistake about it. However, straight from a disallowed Alvarez goal, Nigeria went up the pitch, and a long ball to Awoniyi was not only on the money, but it was also converted. What's going on here? The match went to penalties. Maja scored, and Almada missed. So did Ndidi. Lautaro equalized, and that was followed up by Onekuru, Nico Gonzalez, and Gift Orban, 3-2, and Julian Alvarez would buckle under the pressure. Akasan Yusuf could send Nigeria to the World Cup final, and of course he did. It's obviously frustrating for Amos to not have contributed whatsoever in this run, but you have to celebrate. Even if you're not directly contributing, you're part of something special. So he and his countrymen were off to the Santiago Bernabeu to face Italy in the World Cup final, a stage nobody expected Nigeria to be in. And yet, the dream from the beginning of this story could actually be a reality. Then the universe realized this wasn't supposed to be a fairy tale, and Italy scored in the second minute. Nigeria were heavy underdogs, but nobody was performing. All their juices ran out, but the coach left Amos on the bench, and with less than half an hour to go, Ego tripped up Colombo in the box, and Barella would make it 2. Colombo would score a brace not too long later, shattering the Nigerians' dream with an absolute pounding. With his countrymen in tears at the final whistle, Amos could only console them. He was obviously sad as a Nigerian, but also felt a sense of emptiness. Seeing Italy lift the World Cup just 20 meters in front of you really hit a hard truth. Many great players rarely ever get one chance at this illustrious prize, but the only chance Amos gets is one where he can't change a single thing about the outcome.